Hey guys, Razor Mike. Welcome to my channel where we talk about everything photography, commercial and beauty photographer working out of Miami. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about this lens. It's the RF mount 35mm 1.8 by Canon that is also a macro. Alright guys, welcome back. So I've had an opportunity to play with this lens, and this lens is actually the lens I'm using right now to record this episode. So this is a 35mm 1.8. It's a macro IS STM, so it uses the STM motor. It is IS, so it has image stabilization, which is great, by the way. So I've heard a lot of complaints about this lens. So I've heard things like it makes too much noise when it tries to focus, because the STM motor, as you guys know, makes the lens pop in and out, unlike the ultrasonic motor of the more expensive L series lenses, where everything is kind of built in. There is no extrusion of the lens. But I don't find this lens to be noisy at all. I mean, yeah, it has a little bit of a mechanism that you hear it working as it's focusing, but it's nothing that's gonna really distract anybody or call attention. So I don't know why people are complaining so much about the noise. It's not a factor. Like, stop it with the noise. It is not a problem. On another note, this is a macro lens, and it focuses really, it has a very close focusing distance to objects, which is great for photographers that like to capture details, such as wedding photographers / event photographers. You want to capture details of the napkins, of party favors, whatnot. This is an excellent lens. You can get up and close. Focusing is pretty quick, nice and cinematic. It's a slow, gradual focus shift, and it's a 35mm, right? So it's perfect. It's not too wide where you're gonna have some distortion, a lot of distortion. It's a 35mm, so very minimal distortion, if any. I would say it's, well, as you know, 35 and 50 are as close as possible to what the human eye sees. So 35 is great because 50 might be too tight at certain times, where maybe you don't have space to move back. Whereas the 35, you can actually just move forward and get that tightness of a 50, right? The only drawback, of course, is that you have to physically get closer to your subject. That's the only kind of drawback from the 50mm. But if you had to choose one, I would say 35 is great because it is considered the storytelling lens, right? You can get a lot of context from a 35mm frame, where it shows not only the subject, but the subject and its environment, right? So it is a great storytelling lens, whereas you have the 50mm, which is relatively good. You get some context of the environment, but of course 35 gives you more. But the 85, of course, the 85 and above, those are more portrait lens, which really blow out, they blow out the background as far as bokeh, right? It's all going to be bokeh. It's all going to be blurred. So it gives a little context as to your subject, as to where they are, the environment. So definitely the 85 and above are for that. But this 35 is really great to capture not only just your subject, but their environment, where they are, what they're doing. So that's why it's considered a storytelling lens. Some of the drawbacks that I've heard is the lack of weather sealing on this lens. Now, remind you, this is well, by definition, it is a. Keep in mind, this lens is not considered, it's not an L series lens, which of course L series lens, as you guys know, run thousands of dollars. This is I believe $499 currently in the US. So weather sealing to me is not a big deal. I've shot in the rain with this lens, even though it's not weather sealed, and I haven't had a problem of actually water getting into the camera or anything like that. I mean, of course, I wouldn't shoot in a complete downpour, you know, and even if I did, I would have an umbrella with me. Like, why would I don't understand why that's even a thing for most people, saying that the weather sealing is a big turn off, because, you know, if it was downpouring, I would have an umbrella with me as I'm shooting. So it's like, it's not even like a real use case. So I don't understand why people are complaining about things that are not even a real situation to consider. The image stabilization is great. One thing that we do as content creators, we want to carry as less equipment as possible, and these type of lenses together with the R5 and the R6 give us that flexibility, because you have image stabilization in the lens and you have image stabilization in the body of the camera. So both of them together, and it's both, you know, and they're both Canon products in the same ecosystem, they work together perfectly. So they work in a nice cohesive way to give you the best stabilization possible, which means you do not have to carry around any more tripods, or should I say gimbals, and tripods. Not that you don't need them, but they're less needed, right? So you can get away with a lot with the stabilization that this lens and the body provide for you. So that's one of the big factors for me, because I myself, I shoot all primes, so I'm constantly changing lenses in and out, right? So I'm going from 35 to 85 to 50, and so I want to be able to, so you can imagine if I was to do video with the gimbal, it would be it's always a real pain, because every time I have to change the lens, I have to recalibrate it, right? I have to recalibrate each lens that way to make sure that it's balanced, and then I turn the gimbal on. So that's just an extra, it's just a real nuisance to have to do that every single time. Whereas if I don't have a gimbal, I could just freestyle, just slap on each and every single different lens without having to worry about recalibrating any gimbal, which is great, because all it does is it keeps your creative process going nice and smoothly, and you get more shots, right? So for the time that you're given, because remember, we have a certain amount of time as creatives to shoot what we want to shoot before we basically just burn out, where we have no more ideas coming through and we're just kind of like, oh my god, I am drained, I can't think of anything else to do. And you know, so we have a certain amount of time to get our creativity done. So this is what this does, is it helps free you from things that are going to take up more time to set up, and you're focused more on the creative process of your project, right? So this lens is great, I recommend it, and definitely say give it a shot. All right, Razor Mike out.